Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. Communications, education, marketing, training, coaching, and purpose. If these all sound familiar to you, then thank you very much for listening to my show, because yes, these are topics I tend to cover quite often. But that's why I'm excited about today's guest, because he's a communications expert, he's a teacher, trainer, a coach. He helps people improve their professional selves to communicate better, to build stronger relationships, and to present and lead with confidence. He's the principal at the Comvia group. He is the owner of Michael Piperno Coaching. He's also the host of the Convey podcast. Please welcome to the Dan Nessel Show, Michael Piperno. Michael, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Dan. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. I mean, thanks for coming. You heard me in the intro. I mean, there's a lot you do that overlaps in some ways, or is almost aspirational to some of the things that I do and I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, my listeners will know I do often talk about some of the stuff that you do, communications being central to, well, my living, certainly my daily life and in my day job. But it's also, I think it's such a huge and killer discipline. So I really enjoy it when I'm able to chat with people who are not only communications professionals, but who have taken that to another level and been able to take what they learned and what they've practiced in comms and in marketing and kind of parlay that into a way to help others and serve others through consulting, through coaching, through education, the things that you do. So that's you. I mean, I think I've pretty much captured you a little.
You have very nice. Thank you.
Well, you were telling me just before we got on that you've been in workshops all day. I mean, what was your big thing today? What was that going on?
Well, I was giving a listening workshop to a really great group of folks who hired me basically to, help them be better communicators. And like you said, when you were introducing me, that's really what I'm all about. I'm a teacher at heart. I'm an educator, but I also just really, really believe in the power of good communication. So the two workshops that I did today, one was on listening, and then the other one was on presenting your best, especially when you're leading remotely, which is a big thing right now.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've been talking all day, but this is a nice change to be sitting down with you and having a conversation rather than it being me in front of a whole bunch of people in a Zoom room talking away and doing breakout rooms and facilitating. So this is great.
Of course, we do have this sort of quasi Zoom feel because this is not, there's no video for my listeners, but you and I can see each other through the Squadcast, but I like this better than the Zoom. It's bigger picture, like it seems a little bit,
it is nice,
a little bit crisper. Yeah. The sound is great. But anyway, back to sort of what you were saying there. You glanced over it. You are, you want to help people to be better communicators. It's something that you're passionate about. How did you get here? Like, what is the Michael Piperno story? Because you started out wanting to be an actor, and you ended up where you are, as a consultant and coach and trainer and doing some amazing things. What's the story there?
Oh boy, that's a long story. I'll try to condense it and keep it interesting for you. But yeah, you're right, Dan. I did want to be an actor when I grew up, and I did a lot of acting in my younger days. I actually went into college as a speech and theater arts major, thinking I'm going to be an actor or a director or something. And when I got there, I actually fell in love with the communications department as well. They were housed in the same building, the speech and theater arts and the theater arts and the communications folks. So I decided to double major while I was there, so I got a communication studies degree. I got my speech and theater arts degree. And because, that burning, that person in me who has always been an educator and a teacher, also I got a certification for speech and theater arts in the state of New Jersey. So I actually, when I left college and realized that the acting life wasn't necessarily for me, I became a high school teacher.
Well, that's naturally,
right?
Many people do.
And I taught, actually, that's where the communication thread line really started, because I taught that the school district that I taught in northern New Jersey made every student who went through that school take a public speaking course, which was, I think, wonderful, because the soft skills, the speaking skills, that confidence that you learn in those types of courses, we don't teach people. They
Yep.
have to learn it either on the job or put themselves through a course. So I thought that was pretty cool that they were doing that. This is back in the 90s. And while I
Yep.
was there, they had a theater arts department that had kind of fizzled. There wasn't anybody to teach it. So I started a theater arts. So I taught theater arts and I taught public speaking to high school students for 4.5 years. Loved the students, loved teaching, but that environment of the public school system just wasn't long-term for me.
Sure.
So what I did was I said, okay, I've got to make a change. I'm going to lean back on my communications degree. I've been doing some freelance graphic design. I'm not a true artist. I'm a self-taught designer, but I was good enough that I was able to network myself into a marketing job where I was doing half graphic design and half project management. Actually, my story is a lot about wonderful people who've helped me.
I love that.
And, that person who hired me took a real chance on me and saw in me that there was potential and gave me that chance. And that started, my professional communications career at 26 years old, where I was technically behind a whole bunch of other folks who had gotten into marketing right out of school.
Oh, yeah. I can identify a little bit there with you in more ways than one, actually. When I got out of school, I went over to be a teacher in Japan. So, I started out teaching as well, but it's not the same thing as being a high school teacher here or a teacher of any kind really here in the US. Although many of my colleagues who were teachers in Japan did come back and become teachers here. It's just a different thing. It's more of an international exchange program, but did 3 years of that. And then I went to Tokyo to seek my fame and fortune in the world of business, whatever business meant. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but to me, it started to mean, eventually it got to the world of recruiting and headhunting, because when you are a native English speaker who could speak a pretty decent amount of Japanese, but have no other business skills apart from being able to have a conversation, it's not too hard to get a commission-based sales job. It is very hard to get any other kind of job. So I ended up becoming a recruiter. But this sort of set me on this path: recruitment, HR, et cetera. And it's a long path. But I didn't really get into marketing and communications necessarily until I was almost 30. And at that point, so you were even ahead of me. Like, by the time I was 30, I was like, well, I have all these years of some kind of experience. I know that I can write really well. So I'm going to set myself up as a writer, and I created this job for myself. I created a company, and basically I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. Honestly, I just read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I thought, okay, I got to have my own business. But I could do writing and editing, and I started doing that, and through hook or by crook, with a lot of luck, and with what you said, wonderful people. It all comes down to a couple of wonderful people when you kind of trace your line back.
Yep.
But anyway, the wonderful people got me some clients and helped me to meet some clients and helped me to deceive a few people into believing that I was actually a copywriter. Turns out I was at heart, but so luckily I could write. And, I started off that way as a copywriter, and I didn't know it, but I was building a marketing and communications career at the time.
Right.
But I was behind. I know exactly what you mean, so when I finally figured out that was what I was doing, it made things a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely. And what you said about people helping you along the way is so critical. And when you look at my background, like check me out on LinkedIn, or it looks like, a pinball machine of this job and that job, high school teacher, this, da, da, da. But what you don't see is the thread line, which is very true to my purpose all the way back to that teaching job. I'm an educator and someone who loves communication. And when you combine those two things, and I can help someone be better, that's it for me. Yeah. That's what teaching was when I did that. I still actually do teach at a local university. That's when I moved into medical communications and actually worked for a great company, learned a lot about that, then realized, okay, I had always wanted to start my own business and it was time to do it. That theme line was there as well. I started a branding and marketing agency, and that helped people tell their stories. All right. And then I built that up, sold that agency, and now I'm coaching and training and still doing the same thing, helping people be better communicators, tell their story. And people along that journey have been critical to helping me.
Yeah.
So, there was that person that gave me that first marketing and advertising marketing job, and that was in financial services. Then there was someone who helped me get into medical communications and really showed me the way. I felt very lost getting into that. That was like financial services to medical communications. I mean, I'm dealing with, these amazing, brilliant people with lots of letters after their names and scientists, and there's words being thrown around the room that I don't even understand,
Hmm.
but I had someone who helped me make sense of all of that, you know?
It's terrific. It's terrific when you have a situation where you are, you're with people that you can help,
Hmm.
and they acknowledge the fact that you can help them, even if you're not up on their lingo, or
Hmm.
even if you're still not quite steep in their industry. If it was always the case that you had to know everything about a particular industry before you took a job there,
Hmm.
my career path would have been very, very, very
Yeah.
different and limited. I mean, I'll say,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the great things about being a communicator, though, or being a marketer or a writer, or creative, because those are portable skills and portable kind of disciplines. And the variable here for me, I think, similarly to you, is is the wonderful people that you meet along the way, that those connections and those connectors that have put us together. Like in our case, for example, I mean, there's Nikki Fielding. I mean, look,
Yep.
I'd be remiss if I did a podcast with you and I didn't give a tremendous shout out to Nikki Fielding, who is the owner, president, CEO of Digital Brand Expressions
Hmm.
here in the Princeton, New Jersey area.
Great team.
But Nikki has put me together with a few people, and she knows. She must have just had a sense that we have a very similar story. And she's able, but like it's people like Nikki that just know, they just put you together, introduce you. There's no like ulterior motive. It's just you want people to meet people,
Right.
and I think that's done more for my career than anything else.
Absolutely. And Nikki, I mean, you know how I feel about Nikki. She's a wonderful person. She's actually someone who, supported my business when I did have my agency, and we became friends. And she's someone who, she gets it. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like she can read people and match
Yeah,
people up and know that they're the right fit to just, you know,
totally. It's like second nature.
yeah, totally second nature.
I think it's a leadership trait,
Yeah.
sometimes. But we can get into that too, because that's what you do as
Yeah.
well
Right.
with leadership. I'm sorry, I interrupted your tale though.
Yeah, no, and the other thing about people is, when I've started, different businesses over the years, it's been I mean, I could advertise all I want, but to get a business off the ground, it really was all about the people who trusted me,
Yeah.
who were willing to tell others about me, who respected my work, who knew my intent was always to ethically help in any way that I can, especially in the marketing world. Marketers get such a bad rap, and it's a
Oh
shame
yeah.
because of a few bad eggs out there who do sell things to people that they don't need just to make a buck. But, I think that's what helped me do well in that field, was that people who knew me knew that it was about really helping them achieve their goal.
Yeah. That's when you were, and that's throughout your whole career too. I
Hmm.
mean, when we first met, you were telling me about, maybe it's a superpower. You didn't say it was a superpower. I'm saying it's a superpower. But the ability to get creatives and non-creatives to work together,
Oh
essentially,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Being able to bridge that chasm sometimes that exists between the business side and the creative side, because you've done both of those things, and I feel like I've been there sometimes myself, but I've failed miserably and succeeded sometimes too. But
Yeah.
that's also about, I think, the foundationally, it's about trust.
Yeah.
But how did you go about like figuring out that that was something that you could do? And because I think that's something that kind of builds on what you've done in the past, and maybe even takes you further than takes you
Yeah.
towards your coaching career.
You're really making me think back to how I developed that skill, because it is something I do very well. I'm creative enough that I get creative people, and I'm business savvy enough that I get business people. I think that started, Dan, when I was in the medical communications world. I was in the creative services team, and I realized that there were specific people in the medical group who really wanted me on their team. And I think because they got that I got them, I knew that what we needed, what we were doing had to have that scientific integrity, that, but I was also gentle enough, I guess, and I think this is the educator in me, to help them push the boundaries, but do it in a way that felt safe to them. Because no designer, no design team wants to be sitting around designing the same thing over and over again. I mean, that's so uninspiring. But then again, there are limits to what you can do in that world, in a regulated world like that. So that's where it started. And then when my agency started to grow and I was bringing on more people, I was starting to experience that natural strife that you get between the creative folks and the account managers, project managers, and the accounting folks and all of that, because it's different. It's a different way of thinking. They're different worlds, and they're all necessary.
Yeah.
To run an agency that does things well on budget, makes money, but then also doesn't stifle the creativity of the people who you really do want to push the envelope, to come up with something that nobody else has thought about or seen. So how do you do that and keep everybody happy? I learned you have to be a coach. You're not a manager. You're a leader, but you have to be a coach. You have to help everybody see the strengths of the other people on their team, what they do well. And I'm not going to say what they don't do well, but, or even weakness. I don't love the word weak, strengths and weaknesses, how we talk about that. But, just if everybody takes a moment and thinks about the people that they work with and what everybody's best at or what everybody's really good at, and really help develop each other, the stuff that you can all use your strengths to soak up what the other folks aren't necessarily as good at.
Yeah.
If you're being sensitive to that fact that even exists,
Yeah.
So I was able to, I think I was a good leader. You have to talk to the folks I've led over the years. I've been told that I'm a good leader, and I've been a good mentor. But the bottom line really is just making sure that people feel heard, people feel understood, and that you address things when you can see that things are about to explode on the team. All right, everybody's stressed out. There's a budgetary issue. There's an issue of not feeling inspired and get totally done with this campaign, and you wish it would just go away from no more revisions, please. And when you see that all start to simmer, it's time to talk and help each other understand what our objectives are and what our goals are.
I wish I had known that, back in my days working in an agency. These days, I feel like I've come to a point, partly of just experience and hopefully a little bit of wisdom. I'm looking at my video. I'm seeing the gray eyebrow hairs. I'm assuming that means that I have a thing or two to say that's of worth or of note. But in the sense of communicating with creative people and business people together, and that's always been something that's been a challenge throughout the various roles that I've been in. And in the recent years, especially this past year, I really went over to the creative side a lot, not necessarily in what I'm doing apart from the podcast and maybe some writing. On the personal side, yes, I'm mentally and certainly mindset wise, I have a completely different view of creativity than I did before. And that can be summed up essentially in that we are all creative, which I didn't necessarily believe before, but now I do. And now I think we're all creative. Not only are we all creative, we all have to be creative. I think it's an imperative. I think that we are put here to create in one way or another. And what that takes the form of is a whole different conversation. And we can do that philosophically. Maybe we'll get there in a little while. But when I was working in an agency that, part of our deliverables were these really incredible creative pieces and this intricate work that required a lot of attention to detail, but also just creating new shit that nobody's ever done before, right? There's no template for the things that you do sometimes. I found that when I was thrust into that situation, I was terrible at it. I mean, I was terrible. I was on the account side, not on the creative side. So I would be trying to funnel the needs of what the client has to the creative people, and I'm in the middle, and then like, probably mismanaging some of the timelines here and there, but understanding what the limits of technology are and what the limits of creative people's time are. And hey, when somebody's just not having a great day, because I'm so involved in my own nonsense, really formula for disaster, all that stuff. Now, I mean, I take that as a learning now. Right. And, I offer an unabashed apology, an unconditional apology to some of the folks who I kept chained to their to their Macs, trying to figure out how the hell do you do something on an Apple Watch that hasn't even been released yet. Because I think that I did I wasn't the only one, but I certainly contributed to some misery in their lives. So look, mea culpa on that one. But it was rough times.
We've all done that. I mean, everybody's done that. Everybody has made a decision that has, stopped innovation or creativity in its tracks. But that is one thing that I learned early on was, as a leader, you have to know when to get out of the way.
Yes.
Because like I said, I'm creative enough. I was a good designer. I'm proud of the work that I did. But I very quickly recognized when I had talent on my team that could take it further, and I had to remove myself because I was a barrier.
Yeah.
My project manager hat would go on, and I can see it. I can see the budget getting blown. I can see the timeline going crazy. I can see, and those warning bells start to go off for me. And if I let myself still be part of that conversation, be in that room, I would have brought the creativity to a halt.
Yeah.
So I had to remove myself. And at first, some folks thought that I was being, that I didn't necessarily care or want to be involved or want to be hassled with it, but that wasn't it. I just know me. I know my limits. And I know that the things that come out of my mouth could harpoon this whole thing. Yeah. And by getting out of the way, then you get these solutions that nobody ever thought of. And I love when that happens. When that happens with a team, it's magic. It made me, with the creative teams that I manage, always made me so uber proud. And a lot of times, Dan, I was the one who sparked the initial idea by facilitating.
Yeah.
But I still had no idea where the heck that was going to go. And that's a win for me, is when a team solves a problem in a way that nobody else saw. And especially when it's beautiful from a design standpoint or with words or whatever it is, that's like such a win for me. I love that feeling.
It's like the harmonics of the world line up. It's a hum that goes through. I totally get that. I love that idea though of like getting out of the way. And I think that's one of the hardest things for so many, certainly less experienced managers to learn, but just people in general. They have such a difficulty releasing or relinquishing ownership or letting others kind of raise their babies in some ways. It is a creative effort, and a lot of times it's just an effort to get to the finish line of a project, which has creative elements, et cetera, in it. I mean, it's a family affair. I mean, it takes a village, to do that. Yep. Your village being your team, and maybe some of the other functional teams around you if you're in a corporate environment. But getting out of the way is such a critical part of that. And it takes, I'm going to just kind of throw this out there. I mean, it takes a certain level of maturity, but I think it takes two things. I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of trust in your team.
For sure.
But it takes confidence, because the need to be in there all the time comes from insecurity. And the ability to sort of be self-aware enough to say, crap, I'm right in there. I'm getting in these people way. I know it. I can see the look on his face, on her face, and their faces. I know that something's off. I'm going to pull back. Like just to, and hopefully you don't even have to get that far, but
Right.
I think it's, you have to have utter confidence that your team is going to deliver and that you are making the right decision, or at least a good enough decision.
Yeah.
How do you get there? I mean, that's the thing. Like you help people to do that, right?
Right.
This is a fundamental, I think, benefit of working with somebody like you, Mike.
Yeah, it's all about self-awareness, to be honest with you, what you just described, and a little bit of the gray eyebrow wisdom that, you get along the way. But it really is self-awareness of yourself as a leader, but then also the ability to know who the right people to have in the room are. A lot of what I see with really wonderful people, some of the people I coach, they're great managers and they want everything to be very inclusive and they want they're good communicators. They want people to know what's going on. But that can work against you if you're bringing the wrong people into the room. There was an article I shared on LinkedIn, I think a week or two ago, that really summarized it so beautifully. Basically, is that if you're trying to brainstorm or innovate, or you need certain people in the room, but if you're trying to do something that solves a financial problem or a project management problem, that's different brains who should be in the room. And sometimes they need to be together, but they don't always. So the ability to bring the right people to the table is really critical. But to answer your question, I know I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but
perfect,
the way to, it really is just being self-aware, being honest with yourself, and being willing to be vulnerable. Nobody has all the answers. Nobody does. And when you can, and I think I did this well when I was leading teams, when you can show people that you need their help, that really boosts trust. And builds the relationship. And there were times, again, it always comes back to coaching when I think about managing, you don't want to just always give them the answer, even though you have it. You want to help. That's how you develop people, is by helping them draw conclusions or analyze the situation. Sometimes you're in a high pressure situation, you have to give the answer, but we all should take a step back as leaders. Everything's so fast paced right now, but we need to take a step back. We need to say, all right, is this a development opportunity? Is this a learning opportunity? How am I going to get my people thinking rather than just doing? And if you can do more of that, you're going to see really amazing things that your people can do. And then you're going to learn that you can trust them even more. But if you're not giving them the opportunity to prove that you can trust them, you're just going to be in a vicious circle.
There's no other way for them to grow. You're right. I mean, you can't expect people to grow if you keep telling them exactly what they need to do and don't let them take some degree of ownership over their job or over their day, over their task, over their outcomes. And, to varying degrees depending where they are in their career. But I think even people who are straight out of school or just first in the door, there are things that they can own on a day-to-day basis, and just getting them accustomed to that. I mean, it's, to some degree, I'm feeling like the newer employees, I should say, not the younger ones, but certainly the newer employees in the corporate world are really kind of starting out with a very different culture and a very different approach, where they're kind of ready to be empowered, right? I mean, you can go into the details about, okay, the Gen Xers are one way and the millennials are another way. And then we're in Gen Z, and, oh yeah, these millennials, they want more praise, and these Gen Zers are so, look, some of the millennials may want more praise. I've met Gen Xers who also want praise, by the way.
Me too.
But, however it works, the whole idea of empowerment, being trusted or being expected even to own your job, I think is increasing as you get to the younger groups, the newer employees. So they're actually coming in with this culture where they're not necessarily ever going to experience, hopefully, they're never going to experience this whole idea of this kind of, regimented top down, here's your task list, do these things today, like they would have done maybe in school. And maybe that bodes well for future leaders. I don't know. I don't know if it does. Maybe it does.
Yeah. I look at it as I don't look at it as much as of a generational thing. I look at it, I don't think we train people enough.
Seriously.
I think that's really part of the problem is that, in this accelerating world, which I love, by the way. I mean, I'm a technology nerd. I love all the latest gadgets. I love efficiency. So don't get me wrong when I say this, but we just move too fast and aren't considering the needs of even ourselves, but of the people who we lead. And there are some corporations that do a wonderful job with training, but I mean, I would say 80% of the businesses out there don't. Mm-hmm. And people get thrown into whether it's a young person out of school in their first job, or someone making a career change, or someone just changing companies who's experienced. Most of the time, we fall short on giving them the runway that they need. And that's what I would like to see more of is, okay, we've got a new generation of people coming in. They're just out of school. Yes, you can't ignore the fact that technology has been part of their life for their entire life. Okay, they don't have certain perspectives that people like you and I at our age have. Okay, so how do we set them up for success then?
Yeah,
that's all you need to do. But we're not built to do that. We'll put them through a training program that's been around forever, or we'll give them documents to read, and we'll consider them trained. That's not training.
100% agree with you. Having been through that process for several different companies and organizations through the course of my life. And, actually, now that you mention it, it hasn't changed that much from job to job, company to company. I will say that my current employer has done a phenomenal job with this, more so than anything previous
to any
previous experience, which is really fantastic. And but yet it's an evolution. There's legacy training, there's new training, there's, hey, why don't you customize things to what you need training? There's check the box training, right? There's all this different things that you have to do to kind of get up to speed in a different environment. And the type of business you're in, that varies a little bit, but generally speaking, you've got your policies and stuff that everybody needs to know, and there's very little that's going to change that. But as far as learning how to behave and manage others and these other things, there's a lot more options I think available now. But I think you're right, and we do fall short in giving people the runway, and we move too fast. But what you made me think of during that part of the conversation is this past year was sort of an accelerator, I think, in many ways. Now, I mean, we're recording this in March. This episode will probably go live sometime in mid or late June. And by that point, we're hoping. I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm sure that everybody's hopeful that we will be able to, after that, record the next one together in the same room. At some point.
That'll be nice.
It'd be nice, be outside. I mean, I don't know about you, Michael. I'm mid-vaccine now, so I'm on the way, and
good for you.
Looking forward to being able to be outside. But I mean, we're all outside, but I mean, you know what I mean, with people.
Yeah.
Anyway, but point being that we've had a year, and the remote workforce, especially for the functions that require, that up until now have really required a lot of face-to-face time, but certainly creative functions like sort of what we do, like communications and marketing and so on. There's a lot of collaborative work, and there's a lot of kind of brainstorming and creative activities. And look, we have found ways to cope, but I firmly believe that nothing that has been discovered yet has been able to replace a room with a whiteboard and people who like each other.
I agree. I've done some fun stuff in an app called, have you heard of Miro?
Yeah, Miro is fantastic.
It's great. I mean, it's terrific. It's,
I'm not an affiliate, by the way. I wouldn't mind being one.
Yeah, right.
Miro is fantastic.
But still, yes, I 100% agree with you. And there's something about the energy in a room. For me, especially when training and coaching, there's just so much that you get from someone's nonverbals when you're in person. And yes, Zoom is nice. Okay, it's better to see a face than not. I still think sometimes you should just have audio-only calls when there's no need to see faces, give people a break. But especially when training, I am able to read a room so much better and tailor a training on the fly to the people who are there and the feedback I'm getting from them. And I feel like I do a very good job. I have a lot of interactivity in my workshops that I've been delivering virtually. I make them very engaging. I have people participate, and I have some fun tools to do that. But still, there's that 20% better I could be if I could be in that room with those people.
Yeah. I think if it's just 20%, then you're doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you. I put a lot of work into it, because there's nothing wrong. I mean, who wants to sit in front? Who wants to do a 3-hour workshop with one person just talking to them through the screen? I mean, that's not learning, you know?
Yeah. And there's, the tools are getting more interesting. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of the amount of engagement, the depth of interactivity is impressive. I mean, clearly the last year has really accelerated a lot of this, but the acceleration that I was trying to get at is about this whole idea of, personal empowerment and training.
Mm-hmm.
Training is being part of that, but I think back in the day, in as long ago as 2019, when people would join a company and start to, or join a team, and there'd be the indoctrination process.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, it definitely had been getting better over the past how many years, but still it's an indoctrination process. Then we're all split apart, where we're working remotely. You have all the issues that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
You have the tremendous downside of this, as we've just touched on, the lack of being able to be in touch with people or see verbal cues or see nonverbal cues, and the kind of I guess the damper on collaborative creativity.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely, I think, palpable. Those downsides, and then you have the really deep, dark downsides of folks who are lonely and who really have suffered tremendously. Are looking at the spring coming now and seeing daylight savings yesterday as this.
Right.
Thank God,
Yeah.
we're going to have more daylight, and it's going to, it'll do wonders for people's psyche for sure. But there's a really darkness going on now. In the midst of this, employees naturally who are doing their work and doing whatever they can, not only just to keep their job. I mean, I think there are those who really certainly are like doing what they can to just claw and keep their job.
Mm-hmm.
But companies certainly have realized that they have to do what they can to keep those employees.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like this whole idea of empowerment and ownership of your role has accelerated over the last year. And perhaps one of the upsides of this last year is kind of where we were going earlier in the conversation, where, people are in fact, or hopefully in fact, getting to the point where they are being able to, I guess, lead themselves, or, be better collaborators, be better, more self-aware. There's a whole litany of things I think that people are getting better at by virtue of being apart.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think a lot of people are honing those skills, being better. A lot of it's communication.
Yes.
When you take away all those water cooler moments that we would have. I mean, how many times when you were in your agency days did you have your aha moment when you were walking down the hall talking to somebody, or standing by the coffee machine talking about, what happened over the weekend, and then you get onto the project work, and all of a sudden they have that idea that sparks your creativity.
All the time.
All that's gone. So, it's the responsibility, and leaders had to do this, figure out how to do this fast, and some are doing it well, is to recreate as much of that as possible, but in the virtual world. And like you're saying, those people who are able to take ownership of that, take a hold of their career and their position and their job, and really, do the hard work to do it even better in isolation, is really terrific. And a lot of people have done it. A lot of people are going the other way.
Yeah.
And it's especially my fellow introverted friends, because I'm actually an introvert. I'm comfortable being an extrovert. I'm fine being on stage. I don't mind cameras on me, but I prefer I like my quiet time. I like to think. I like to create on my own. I mean, that's when I do my best work, is when I can get away from people and create. So my fellow introverted friends, some of those folks are feeling a little bit battered by not being able to be heard. And it's hard. It's hard. So we have to help each other.
Yeah.
We have to help each other. There's a lot of great stuff though, that the other side of it, getting back to your point about people kind of, taking the reins on their position or career, we've kind of taught all the naysayers that you can have remote people.
Yeah.
If they're people who are good remote people. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Not everybody's cut out to be a remote team member. And some of those people will admit it and some of them won't. But if you are a good remote team member and you're okay with that life, I mean, look at all the opportunities after this that are opened up to you. You don't have to move for a job anymore.
Yeah. And companies are certainly wise to this, or
Mhm.
well, I should say the wise companies are wise to this.
Yeah.
And that's why they need to be doing more to engage employees and to help their employees, contribute to employee well-being. I think it was, I said engage employees. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think it was Adam Grant,
Mhm.
the Wharton fella.
Yep.
Earlier this year, he said that he wanted to retire the term employee engagement.
Okay.
He felt it wasn't do you really want to be engaged? Like, it sounds like you're being kind of manipulated or turned on by something. I mean, whereas, nobody goes to work feeling like, hey, I want to be engaged. My point of going to work is being engaged. Like
Right.
he had a obviously much more eloquent way of
Right.
describing this than I am right now.
No, you
Sorry,
did a good
Adam.
job. No, you did a good job.
But instead he said we should be thinking in terms of employee well-being.
Mhm.
And, because that's what a company can do. A company has the capability to improve an employee's well-being.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe that's a product of this year, this whole idea of well-being, of just on, around like in a 360 sort of way, in a holistic way. It's not just healthy.
Right.
It's how, it's everything. It's their mental state. It's their, their joy at work or their satisfaction at work, all these different things.
Yep.
But it kind of all ladders up in some ways to people understanding, what their purpose is, right? I mean,
that took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah.
See, I know where you're going. Yeah. I mean, and I know for me, it's been a year of discovery, and all my listeners who've been repeat listeners would know that we talk about this sometimes. But I'd love to get your take on this. Have people discovered their purpose more in this past year, or maybe it's better to talk about this in terms of what people need to do to kind of get to that purpose? I don't know. The floor is yours, Michael.
Yeah, well, that's a topic I love. I actually do a lot of personal brand coaching, and I always start with purpose. When I coach a business leader who's stuck in their business and not sure what to do, we go back to purpose. Okay. If you want your employees to be engaged, if you want them to be well, if you want them to feel like they have a voice, if you want them to care about your business as much as you do, you need to communicate why we're all here, the purpose. So for me, I've felt lost in my career inside companies, but I haven't felt that way in a long time. And I can really pin it down to when I was able to verbalize and live true to my purpose. And you've heard me say it a couple times today. I'm a teacher and I'm a coach and I'm a communicator. And when I can do those things together to help someone else, I'm living my purpose. Now that's a very small, that's not a big corporate purpose, but that's what drives me. So to answer your question, have people found their purpose more during this pandemic? I do think so.
Yeah.
I've coached a lot of folks who have come to me and said, I know it's a dirty word, but I got to pivot. I got to reboot. I need someone to confidentially talk this out with, someone who's going to be, completely objective. And I've helped a lot of folks do that pivot by helping them communicate their purpose to themselves, number one, and then be able to communicate that out to the people they're going to sell to or lead or whatever. So yeah, I've seen people doing it more because of that. I hope it's a trend that continues, because I'll tell you, when you find your purpose And your purpose doesn't have to stay the same for the rest of your life. Okay. Yeah. People often think that it's like, oh, that's my purpose and that's going to be it. No, find it for now. All right. Find that essence of what drives you and what you want to be doing. Because when you find that and you can claim it and you can describe it to other people, man, Dan, you're unstoppable. You are unstoppable.
I not only do I agree with you, I've been told this now by several different people over the course of recent weeks, so I have to believe it. The universe is speaking about it. I was just thinking about Patrice Tanaka, who's become a dear friend, but was a guest on the show. Her episode's going to air just a little bit before yours.
Okay.
But Patrice runs a company called Joyful Planet. And in fact, after this, I have to connect you guys. And,
love that. Thanks.
And that's been recorded, so you can hold me to it
now.
Yeah, but look up Patrice Tanaka, and anybody who's listening, of course, who would have heard the Patrice episode will know. But anybody who didn't hear that, go listen to it, because Patrice is fantastic, just a phenomenal soul. She talks about purpose quite a bit. In fact, it's her purpose. Her purpose is to find people's purpose. But she also is connecting, individual purpose to business purpose. And she pointed out that having your individual understanding what your purpose is on an individual level, right, is so important to being fulfilled at work. Well, first of all, you need that to achieve joy in life, period. You cannot achieve joy. And by the way, joy does not necessarily mean happiness all the time, according to Patrice, but I agree with that. But to reach the life that you should be living, you have to figure out what your purpose is. And if you're an employee, your company also has a purpose. And if it has a well-defined purpose, it's really critical to figure out how your purpose ladders into the corporate purpose.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So I imagine that's something that you deal with quite often.
Definitely. Absolutely. And there are many companies out there that do it well. They get their, not only their employees, but their customers are loyal and raving fans because there's a clear vision, your whole mission and vision and all that, but there's a purpose for what they do. All right. And that's important. But yes, when you can align your personal purpose with the larger purpose of the larger organization, I mean, that's absolutely a win-win. And I also tell folks that when you can really find and define and live your purpose, I don't want to say that people are poor, but you become more portable. You can see how that fits.
That's interesting.
Into different organizations. So when you realize, what satisfies you, what gives you that drive to do what you do, it's funny how and I see this in the people that I coach, it just starts to open these doors that have always been there, but they just weren't noticing them. And that's a really, especially after what we've just gone through with so many people, being downsized, losing their jobs, having hours cut back, having to, pivot their businesses and everything. The ability to do that is life or death for those folks, with their careers. So that's just another reason to say, the individual purpose is really a critical thing to work on. It's another skill, I guess I would say, to have in your toolbox.
Yeah, as you're talking about it, I'm trying to think what is my purpose? Because I have said many times, throughout the last several months, certainly in the last year, that I want to help people be more creative. Very simple, right? I feel like that's a purpose, if not the only purpose I have, right? Yeah. I want to help people be more creative. I want to make this a more creative world.
Why?
Because I'm a creative person myself. It's a way for me to live out, I think, that imperative I spoke about before, which is, I think we're all put here to create. And I think there's just I get so much joy from it whenever I have look, sometimes it's torturous getting there. and maybe this is a good example of why living your purpose being joyful doesn't always mean happy.
Yeah.
Right? Because, if I'm writing something or, sometimes I will say though, that the podcast to me is another creation, right? It's a definite, it's not just content we're creating. It's a mission. Like it's putting my voice and my thoughts out there, but in a way that's serving somebody else to be a platform for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, fulfilling that creative mission in some ways. I will say that when it comes to the podcast, I have not had a moment that was not happy or not joyful while I'm recording.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, then it's like after you pile up a couple episodes, like, okay, it's time to start editing. And like it's Sunday afternoon or Saturday because I do it in my off time for my day job. I have a day job, right? So, is it always like the most fun in the world to sit down and launch my my Adobe Audition and start to go through sound files and listen to ums and ahs?
Yeah.
No, right? That's not joy. I mean, that's not happiness or fun, but it is joy.
Yeah.
Because the end result is going to be fantastic. So, that it's all part of this, I think, my own personal kind of mission here, which is to do that. But I also want, it's also to me to teach others to be creative is another part of that.
Right.
Like being a teacher and a guide and a coach, something that I've dabbled with. I mean, I've certainly dabbled with teaching for real, but as a manager and as a leader, I find myself to be a better teacher manager slash guide manager than, or or even a player coach or a coach than hey, this is what you need to do type of manager, right?
Right.
So I love it when I'm able to work with my team and, either teach them something or even better, learn something from them because the flip side of teaching is learning.
Yep.
And you can't have one without the other. I think it's a cycle.
Right.
I wrote down something you said just a little while ago, which is a big learning for me is when you realize your purpose, you become more portable. I've never heard it put that way. So, this is one of the things that like when I do my podcast and when I do these creative things, it's a moment that is a pure moment of joy for me when I'm like, now this is something. I walk away from pretty much every episode with something like this. Some nuggets, some things that are just maybe you feel the same way with yours.
I totally do. I know.
What you mean. But that's about that's where I've come with my purpose.
Yeah. Well, I love the way you put that. And I know even from just our past conversations that's the essence of you. That's who you are. Yeah. And I think that's great. And I think that you made a great point for everybody here to understand, because when people throw purpose around and they think it's a fuzzy word, because a lot of people are, they say, oh, find your purpose and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that's not true. If you are after something because it's driving you, you're going to work hard.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not always going to be happy. I'll give you an example. I mean, I'll get a coaching engagement with someone whose manager wants me to coach them. They don't want me to coach them. Okay.
Oh.
Those first 3 sessions are not happy. They're torture for me.
Yeah.
Okay. But I know we'll get there. And I have to do those uncomfortable conversations to get them to the point where they are now seeing, okay, I can trust Michael. He's here to help me. I have to do this anyway because my boss wants me to. And then look at that. Boom. I just saw a blind spot that's holding me back. And boom, I just realized I'm not leading as good as I think I am, as well as I think I am, you know? And then things get better. But if I gave up on those folks, they'd never make it there. And it's not it's not fun, but it's necessary. But I'm still fulfilling my purpose, okay? Because I'm helping them get from point A to point B, even though they don't really know where point B is yet.
And that's the joy of it, right? Is helping people understand what their point B is.
Yeah. And a lot of it, Dan, for me, the best, the easiest, the most joyous, the most happy clients for me are the ones that want my help, because we're out of the gate right away. They're seeing value right away. And the funny thing is, this is what I love about what I do, because teaching and coaching are different. I mean, I love teaching. I love spreading knowledge. I love giving people skills that they can carry forward, tell other people about, all of that. But what I love about coaching is what I'm usually doing is just putting the mirror back so you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm showing you what I see and what I hear. And most of the time, it's just something that you're missing or that you haven't noticed. And most of the time, it's helping people really understand their strengths, the difference they make, the value they bring, and to verbalize that for themselves, which is going to make them be better able to do that, to excel. So it's just a mirror, but it's a powerful one when you have that guide that you're talking about to help draw that stuff out of you so that you can see it. I hope I'm making sense, but I'm passionate about it.
Well, totally.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, you're doing like, one of the core elements of storytelling, which is to find the metaphor, and you've got that, the mirror. It's wonderful. But you're a great storyteller. You're a good communicator. Obviously, you're a fantastic communicator. You've got your own podcast. We've been talking this whole time, and I have just had a great time with this conversation. I don't know about you, but I certainly.
Me too. Thank you. Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it.
But I'm sure that my listeners are also coming away with this whole thing like Jesus, Michael is a killer communicator. I mean, the real deal. He talks the talk, he walks the walk and talks the talk. And that's kind of, I think it's a shame, but it's a good place to stop because we're about out of time.
That really went fast.
It went super fast.
I just looked at the clock. Whoa. All right.
I know. And I have a list of other things to talk about too, but I've really enjoyed this conversation, Michael. It's been a lot of fun just digging into, those purpose for the last part of this, but we talked about so much, and the changes in the world that we've seen over the past year as it relates to working with your teams and employees and dealing with creatives and all these coaching and teaching, these wonderful topics that I like to hear about and talk about, leadership. So listen, you're welcome back anytime. I think this has been a tremendous conversation. And then, maybe next time we'll dig into like this, the discipline of communications or something, a little bit more closely. But I want to direct our listeners here to check out michaelpiperno.com if you want to find Michael.
Yep.
Also look up Michael Piperno on LinkedIn, and his name will be spelled as it is in the episode title. Any place else, Michael, that people can find you or look for you?
michaelpiperno.com is the best place. I got a great blog. I share communication tips once a week, sometimes every other week when things are a little bit busy. And they can also check out my podcast as well, Convey, which is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
The Convey podcast. Obviously, you've heard Michael here, even better on his own podcast.
Well, thank you.
As hard as that is to believe.
I hope to catch up with you someday. I saw you're at the time of this recording, you're over 40 episodes at this.
Yeah, man. And this one will be well over 50. I mean, there's it's a passion play, man. It's a lot of fun. I love talking to people. I'm very blessed and fortunate that I have good people to talk to. So as long as that continues, I have no problem turning on the mic and doing these sessions. We have good things to talk about. And I know that my listeners will absolutely appreciate this and appreciate you. So thanks for coming on, Michael. Really, again, appreciate this.
Oh, you're so welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
You're awesome. Thanks. If you enjoyed this episode of The Dan Nessel Show, please head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the podcast player of your choice to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please don't forget to spread the word. Thanks for listening.